one conclave. Can you talk a little bit about what happens as the crowds are waiting to look at the smoke, and why we have that disjunction between possible smoke and possible not?
Oh, sure. Well, when people, they have an idea. I mean, they know the cardinals are meeting, it's Thursday morning, the cardinals are meeting for so many hours. Something is going to come out of that. And so the expectation, just people chit-chatting, but there's an excitement.
And once again, if you're just joining us, we are broadcasting live from the Vatican. My name is Christopher Wells. We'll be joined here in a few minutes with my co-host, Devin Watkins, our guests, Joan and Father Gregory, and Dr. Joan Lewis, my friend, Dr. Donald Prudlow. As many of you know, many of you have heard Joan Lewis speaking on EWTN. I would like to greet all of our listeners listening in on our partner stations, including EWTN, but also Catholic Faith Network in America, UCTV, Uganda Catholic Television, Mata TV India, Shalom World Television Networks USA, Atmadarshan TV, Radio Katipunan from the Philippines, Catholic TV, and Luminous Radio. And perhaps we could talk about, we saw we're looking at the most famous chimney in the world. And Joan, you were just telling me now about your experience of watching very famous papal chimneys in
the conclaves that you've experienced. You've experienced 5, 6. Were you here for the election of Paul VI?
I've been here for the death of 5 popes and 4 or 5 conclaves, but not all covering all of them
and a papal resignation.
And a papal resignation, exactly. And then I think I said earlier the most unusual when it was John Paul I who died. I was at his inaugural mass,
and then left several days later on a special assignment for 3 months in Cairo, Egypt, with the New York Times.
And that's where I learned about the death of John Paul I and the election of John Paul II. And exciting times to come back here then to a new pope, leave Rome, be away for a couple months, and have the third pope, of course, of 1978, John Paul II.
And Joan Lewis, our special guest. We also have Paulist Father Greg Appercell. Welcome back.
I was just thinking of the fall of 1978 and the year of the 3 popes. That was when I entered the Paulist novitiate.
So it's sort of like the beginning of my religious life. Not sort of. It was the beginning of my religious life, and it was such a huge event, a huge series of events in our Catholic Church.
Yeah, and so just to get some of this excitement, we're going to go to a couple of correspondents in the square. First, we're going to go back to Kelsey Gussie, who's still in the square. And Kelsey, how are things going there?
Good. I've actually been talking to a lot more pilgrims who have come from all over, and there's actually one couple who are here on their honeymoon. And they were originally supposed to have a mass, like an audience, with the Pope yesterday, but obviously things changed, and they're super happy to be here to see the potential white smoke. And other people have come also on vacation, one celebrating her daughter's 18th birthday, and so this is an extra special gift that she'll definitely remember forever.
And have you've seen the seagulls? Everybody's been noticing the seagulls. I think they're getting their own page on X, and right now most of our images are just of the smoke, the chimney. It doesn't seem to have any particular fauna around, but has anyone been discussing the natural phenomena that occur around there?
About the seagulls?
Yes.
Well, the seagulls have been a topic of discussion for sure. It's definitely like a signal to people to see whether the white smoke will be happening or not. And I think a lot of people have joked that the seagulls know more than we do, but we'll just have to wait and see.
Oh, thank you, Kelsey.
And in fact, Kelsey, I was very happy to hear your story about the newlyweds here in Rome. It reminds me of a story from the election of Benedict the 16th. And I had 2 friends here in Rome, a fellow from New York and his wife from Germany. And when they were married here. They met here in Rome and were married here in Rome. And what many people perhaps don't know is it's possible to get married in St. Peter's Basilica. So my friends asked to be married in St. Peter's Basilica. They were given one of the side chapels. You don't get married at the high altar, Chapel obviously. Of the choir.
The chapel of the choir. Yes, exactly. And so they had a very beautiful ceremony, and they actually asked a bishop that they knew to celebrate the wedding for them. And that bishop, the bride's friend, was Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger. Mm-hmm.
And very shortly after that, he became Pope. So they were in the square doing stand-up interviews with journalists, and they had a picture of themselves in their wedding outfits with the new Pope who had celebrated their wedding. So there's so many of these stories. Father, I'm sure you can tell.
I used to do,
countless
in
tales.
my early days, I did celebrate 25 weddings a year in the chapel of the choir. And I remember when Pope John Paul II died in 2005, we had 4 weddings scheduled during the time that he was laid out for viewing. And so they, at the time, I don't know if they would do it today, they said, you can have those weddings still. You can go in the back door. We'll close the curtain and no music.
Or they can come back to our Church of Santa Susana. All 4 couples decided to do it that way.
Wow.
And it was, there's a huge long line of people streaming up to pay homage to Pope John Paul II, and we were doing these little weddings in the chapel.
In fact, that speaks to the pastoral role of St. Peter's Basilica, where they have not only weddings, they also have baptisms. Have you done baptisms in the Basilica?
No, because they do them on Sundays, and it was hard for me to get away from the parish. I did 2.
But with your church and with St. Patrick's, Rome is certainly a tourist destination, but for Catholics, it's a spiritual destination as well. So you still have to do pastoral care.
Yes, yeah, and I also do what I call spiritual walking tours, where we go to see 3 or 4 or 5 churches on a Tuesday morning, and pilgrims come as well as parishioners.
And of course, that ties in with both the Jubilee this year.
Yes.
We've already talked about you welcoming many pilgrims, but also with the idea of synodality, which has been the perhaps premier initiative of Pope Francis in these past years. Can you talk about the idea of walking together in that context for you in Rome?
And in fact, I remember one time we did have a tour of this several years ago in Santa Maria Maggiore, and they told us to wait in the vestibule because there was a special guest coming through. They turned all the lights on, and we turned, and Pope Francis walked right out of the sacristy to go to the icon to pray before a trip that he was taking to Mexico.